Introduction to Shipborne Battle Manual. Shipborne Battle Manual. When the ratio of the caliber of the shell to the thickness of the armor at the midpoint is greater than 14.3, the shell will ignore the angle and forcefully penetrate the armor. When armor-piercing shells are insufficient to penetrate the target, high-explosive shells can be used to ignite enemy warships and cause them to sink. 3. Hiding in smoke and firing can effectively avoid being detected by enemy ships, but please be careful of torpedo attacks from enemy ships. If a warship has good maneuverability, it can avoid incoming shells by constantly changing its course and speed. 5th. Before the battle, please read the required textbooks such as Dragging Knives and Throwing Shit, Charging and Pulling Sides, Lightning Strike and Dog Fighting, and other ship mother textbooks carefully. Alternatively, you can choose to read textbooks such as Shan and Pulling Smoke, based on the ship type. The content in this manual is completely nonsense. You don't even understand naval warfare. Wrong, it's because you don't understand the ship's mother at all. Pre-reading instructions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Firstly, as usual, thank you to all the readers who have clicked into this book. However, considering that the content of this book may cause some completely unnecessary debates, I need to explain some of the content of this book in advance before starting the main text. As you can see, this is a ship girl novel. However, unlike the mainstream mode in current ship girl literature and ship-like games, where girls carry ship equipment and engage in close combat on the sea, the ship girl battle in my mind tends to have both ship and ship modes. I pondered that naval warfare should be like raging waves surging, warships chopping waves, artillery roaring, and steel colliding. Although the era of artillery warships has passed, the glory of large ships and cannons still lingers in the minds of enthusiasts. So this is the basic architecture of this book. The part of Jian is easy to understand. Attention should be paid to issues related to warships and naval warfare. This book will not describe naval battles under any realistic framework, and the rules of combat will not be closely related to real-life naval battles. So this book belongs to a work that emphasizes the romance and passion of warships, integrating a certain degree of realistic factors with the rules of magical naval warfare. Therefore, in this book, you will see the following elements. As the backbone of the team, the battleship is propelled by the sales team, equipped with a designated gun turret, towing knives and spraying fire, and pulled to the side at high speed. As a versatile fighter on the battlefield, cruisers that roam the front lines, engage in air defense and anti-submarine operations, engage in high seas diving and washing, and output from Cashin. As a fleet outpost, a concealed control point, advancing through smoke formations, flank ambushes, and a destroyer engaged in artillery and mine strikes. As a field control master, fully output, suppress vision, cover friendly forces, and attack the aircraft carrier at the breakout point. There are also underwater little people who have lost some important things. You will also see the ultimate constant of the universe. 14.3. A warship that can be sunk by fire. A blueprint ship with magical performance. Wait a minute. If you feel unwell, please report to Ping and Naval Battle at Ping and Naval Battle. In short, the only thing you won't see is novels that depict normal naval battles. I naturally know what real naval battles look like, but it's definitely not what I wrote. The naval battles in reality are too boring. I am writing novels, not papers. So, in order to avoid any meaningless verbal battles, I emphasize these contents here, hoping that everyone takes into account the reading experience of others and tries to avoid publishing chapters that say, what you wrote is pure nonsense, in reality. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, there's one more important thing. This is not fan fiction. This is not fan fiction. This is not fan fiction. Say important things 3 times. Apart from some nouns, such as blue, white eagle, and sakura, and character designs, in fact, even these nouns are simply not related to the anti-harmony of real countries, and do not contain any content that includes the worldview of ship-like games. Therefore, please do not read this book as a fan of ship-like games. If you insist on being a fan, then this book is also a fan of Ship W, laughs. If you have already seen this and haven't exited yet, then I will repay your expectations with excellent works. Above. Overview of warship data in the book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, battleship. Annapolis, category. Super cruiser, data. 236.59 meters long, 23.28 meters wide, 24.3 meters high, with a standard displacement of 27,000 tons, main gun. For triple-mounted 203 mm/55 RF 16 Malawian Quachas naval guns, auxiliary gun/anti-aircraft gun. 6 twin-mounted 127 mm/54 16 Malawian Quachas dual-purpose guns, Mk.42 turret, 10 twin-mounted 76.2 mm/7023 Malawian Quachas anti-aircraft guns, mobility. Power 160000 HP, turning radius 850 meters, maximum speed 33 knots, rudder shift time 8.8 seconds. Preface. You are the last hope of our army. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the long brewing rainfall caused by the low clouds surging in the air finally arrived as promised. Raindrops hit the portholes of the warship, making a relaxing and crisp click sound. The water droplets on the windows follow the force of gravity and wind into crisscrossing water marks on the glass. Outside the porthole, the battleship's triple-mounted main guns slowly returned to center, and the black and heavy muzzle emitted smoke that had not yet completely dissipated. This seemingly beautiful white smoke followed the movement of the muzzle to form a blurred arc trajectory, but was quickly washed away by the rain. The gun barrel, which was scorching due to rapid firing, quickly cooled down in the icy rain. This may be a good thing, as no one knows when the next wave of enemy ships will arrive. Wang Yu, with a haggard face, raised his telescope in front of his eyes, which were already visibly bloodshot, and aimed it towards the port side of the warship. About 7 kilometers away from the battleship, a small, pitch-black ship was slowly sinking in the burning flames, and even the already dense raindrops were difficult to extinguish the flames of this scale. The bow of the small ship was still pointing in this direction, and it was obvious that it was trying to approach at full speed until it was completely destroyed. These uniquely shaped black warships have various names, some call them sea mist, while others call them deep sea. A relatively recognized term is the Siren fleet. But no matter what the name is, these bizarre appearances that control all the oceans on the planet, forcing human civilization to prioritize land and embark on a path of regaining sea power, have always been a nightmare for every naval commander. What a troublesome guy. Wang Yu muttered in a voice that only he could hear. Then he walked back to the center of the bridge, picked up a tablet, and began adding more content to the already recorded battle records. At 3:20 p.m., the last Siren destroyer was sunk. This encounter ended with the complete annihilation of the Siren fleet, which lasted for 1 hour and 27 minutes. Our fleet destroyed 1 Siren battleship cruiser, 2 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 6 destroyers. Our fleet's battleship Jean Bear sank, leaving 1 remaining battleship in the fleet. When recording the damage to the friendly fleet, Wang Yu put down his tablet and shook his head slightly. Far behind the battleship, there is a rapidly sinking ship Shadow. The bow and 2 front-mounted 380mm main guns have sunk into the raging sea, while the stern is raised high, carrying propellers and servos out of the sea. The propeller blades are powerless in the air to make the final rotation before sinking, as if this warship is still struggling with all its strength to avoid sinking into the deep blue sea. This is the wreckage of the battleship Jean Bear. In the recent naval battle, this battleship destroyed the battleship cruiser of the Siren fleet at the front foot, and due to careless positioning, it solidly ate 13 torpedoes fired by the Siren destroyers and cruisers at the back foot. Even for battleships, this could be considered a lethal dose, so in almost an instant, this battleship, which should have taken on more responsibility, lost its combat effectiveness. There are lifeboats floating on the sea, loaded with many abandoned personnel. You can have the warship turn back to save them, but it's not necessary. To be precise, he is now the main target, and the Sirens in the entire sea are staring at him as the last battleship. Before his main target was relieved of combat effectiveness, the Sirens would not focus on those lifeboats that had no power or threat. Saving them now would harm them. Instead, they should quickly move away from this sea area, attract the Sirens' fleet, and allow these survivors to at least float on the sea, waiting for possible rescue in the future. In fact, this is currently recognized as the combat mode by the human navy. In the presence of the Siren threat in the sea, stopping the ship for rescue is not only irresponsible to one's own warship, but also to the survivors in the water. Survivors of sunken warships will be taken in by professional search and rescue fleets that come later, and what the combat fleet needs is to ensure that the self that attracts the Siren fleet stays away from the floating waters of survivors. Cruel but effective. Survivors may need to float on the sea surface for several days to be rescued, or they may eventually drift along the ocean currents to some land, or they may not be rescued. But these results are much better than letting the combat fleet stay in place, surrounded by the Sirens, and then all of us perish together. Amidst the rain, the lonely battleship maintained its original speed and course, getting further and further away from the lifeboats floating on the sea. Thinking that there was only one warship under his command left on the sea, Yu couldn't help but sigh. Now I have really become the last coward of our army. Oh no, it's the last hope of our army. The Siren's attack was repelled, and the next attack had not yet arrived, giving him time to catch his breath. He took 2 steps and arrived at a metal plaque hanging on the armored command tower inside the bridge. The metal nameplate is engraved with the name and silhouette of the warship where one is located. Super Cruiser. Annapolis, the Annapolis Super Cruiser, conceived by the World Federation Navy, is the only in the Super Warship series of plans that have been built without the blueprint. Based on the heavy cruiser Des Moines class, it has undergone comprehensive upgrades in firepower, armor, power, and equipment, making it one of the best naval vessels in the world government. But even if it's a strong warship, how much of a role can only one remain? Raising his hand, Yu gently caressed the silhouette of the battleship on the nameplate, as if caressing the skin of his lover. In a daze, he felt like he was back when he became the commander of this brand new battleship over 2 years ago. As a young man, he graduated from the Naval Military Academy of the World Federation government as the chief. His excellent grades and perfect practical internship record undoubtedly made him the commander of this newly manufactured Annapolis. When I first took office, it seemed like I was touching the metal nameplate of a warship with this kind of movement. At that time, he was full of passion and vowed to regain human sea power, but after a long battle with the Sirens on the sea, he saw a large number of comrades sacrificing their lives and friendly ships sinking in the cold sea, and he had become somewhat numb. The sharp edges of the nameplate stung Yu's fingers, and he withdrew his hand like an electric shock, his memories fading away like a tide. Yu shook his head suddenly, his mind seemed to be a bit dazed from not resting for a long time. At this time, recalling those past events was clearly not a good omen. Because he has more important things to do. He returned to the center of the bridge and picked up the tablet again, but this time he used the voice recording function. His voice has become very hoarse due to not drinking water for a long time. This is the 10th voice recording by Commander Yu of the Annapolis. Another battle has ended, and this is the 8th wave of Sirens encountered by the fleet in 36 hours. Unfortunately, their desire to attack is increasing with the wave number. Although we have solved this batch of Siren fleets, our own fleet has suffered heavy losses. To be precise, there is no fleet left now. Currently, only the warship I command is still floating on the sea, and other friendly forces have become sunken wreckage. In theory, it is impossible for so many Siren warships to appear in a single sea area. Oh, in theory, many things that should not have happened in theory have already happened in this sea area. The full band blocking interference caused by the appearance of the Siren fleet has not subsided, and I am unable to transmit my own information through radio. This phenomenon should not have occurred either. After solving the Siren warships, the various anomalies associated with them should also have subsided. However, since the fleet encountered the first wave of the Siren fleet, communication has been constantly disrupted, even wireless communication between warships cannot be carried out, and we have to use outdated lantern language for communication. But there's good news, all friendly warships have sunk now, so I don't need to consider communicating with friendly forces anymore. When Wang Yu said this, he smiled, but it looked like a bitter smile no matter what. Perhaps it was because he became an isolated ship in the ocean, or perhaps it was because he guessed the foreseeable future ahead. Then he continued to speak to the recording device. Based on the experience summarized from previous battles, the next wave of the Siren fleet will appear in 3 hours, and it is expected that the number of main ships will further increase. The strength and number of Sirens in this sea area far exceed the current human observation records. If what we have encountered is not a special phenomenon, then I think the Siren group should have undergone changes that are worthy of vigilance. If the Annapolis, which records detailed combat data, could return to port, researchers studying the Sirens might be able to extract useful information from it, but... Wang Yu paused for a moment before continuing. However, the warship was hit by torpedoes in the previous battle, causing damage to its power system. 2 large caliber shells were fired below the waterline, and the hull was also damaged. Currently, the maximum speed can only reach 23 knots. For a cruiser that relies on maneuvering for food, this speed has made me a target of Sirens. Therefore, after the next wave of Sirens arrives, it is estimated that it will be the end point for me and this warship. From various perspectives, the current situation has met the abandoned ship standard in textbooks. I should abandon the warship and try to survive through lifeboats that will not be the main target of the Sirens for the time being. But I cannot do such a thing, just like no captain can abandon his ship. I would choose to sink with this warship, which is my responsibility as a commander. I will fulfill all the responsibilities of a battleship commander, fighting against the Sirens until the very last moment. I will also put the combat records and this recording in the lifeboat before the warship sinks, and hope that the Sirens will not destroy it. This way, if someone can find this information I have left in the future, they may be alert to some new phenomena that may arise in the Siren fleet. Above, the recording is over. Wang Yu put down the tablet and took a deep breath. He ended the voice recording and placed the tablet that recorded the fleet's combat process and several segments of his voice into a portable small safe. Then, he put the safe into the enclosed lifeboat on the side of the battleship. Now, he must go rest. So far, he has not slept for over 30 hours. He had already tried his best to maintain logic in those words just now. Now that he had taken that breath, he was completely drowsy, with an alarm ringing in his mind that required him to rest immediately. Wang Yu also decided to do so. Although at the current pace he is always dead, Wang Yu doesn't want to die suddenly before the warship sinks. So, Wang Yu decided to entrust the speed and heading of the warship to the automatic system on board for management, and then go to sleep. At least in the next wave of Sirens, he can barely maintain his energetic state. Then, for the last time. At least the last time he felt. He glanced at the battleship battle bridge that he was already extremely familiar with, and reached out to touch the metal nameplate of the battleship again. Recalling his life from entering the military academy for training at a young age to fighting the Sirens day and night, he jokingly said to the battleship. "If there is a next life, become a girl and be by my side." Subsequently, he left the bridge and arrived at the commander's room located below the main deck through the internal staircase. Closing the solid cabin door, Wang Yu lay down on the not-too-soft bed with his clothes, and quickly fell asleep. Shortly after he went to sleep, the rain suddenly increased rapidly and rainstorm poured down on the sea. The dense rain, accompanied by a crackling sound, splashed countless splashes on the sea surface, while also forming downward-sloping, water curtains, at the protrusions on the surface of the warship. But what is more interesting is that the wind and waves did not come with the rainstorm. The whole sea area can only see the dense and crisscross ripples produced by the raindrops, but there is no undulating waves. Perhaps, without these ripples aroused by the raindrops and the white wake left by the warship's navigation, the whole sea area would be as flat as a mirror. This is undoubtedly a very eerie scene. For example, the warships at this time seem to be sailing on a calm inland lake, rather than being more than 4,000 meters deep. In this rainstorm weather, at least they should also be in the deep ocean. The rainstorm like a splash blocked the line of sight. In the already dark sky under the clouds, the whole sea area can only be seen in a vast expanse, with visibility less than kilometers, as if the sea area where the warships are located has been divided from the world. The shadow of the warship disappeared into the rain, as if it had disappeared from this world. Chapter 1. Starting from a wonderful journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Wang Yu was able to become the chief of Naval Academy graduates, and being able to command the Annapolis, the only supercruiser in the human navy, at a young age, represents that he is an excellent and disciplined, outstanding talent. This is more or less reflected in his strict requirements for himself during combat navigation. For example, when threatened by sirens, he usually adopts the sleep mode adopted by pilots, which is to enter deep sleep anytime and anywhere, allowing sleep to not take up too much time and restore energy in a very short time. This ensures that when the siren appears, he can command the battleship battle with full energy. So when he woke up, he realized that he had been sleeping for almost 20 hours, which was clearly beyond his own expectations. Looking at the clock that had almost turned twice, Wang Yu sat beside the bed lost in thought. Or rather, focused on thinking. It shouldn't be. Even if one's biological clock occasionally malfunctions, does the alarm that appears on the warship when the sirens appear not awaken oneself? Wang Yu just had a slight idea and then left it behind. No one understands the alarms on a warship better than him. The high-frequency alarm sound and the rapid flashing red light are useful for waking up vegetative beings when sent to the hospital. As long as a person has not died, they can be awakened. So the answer is predetermined, that is, in this nearly 20-hour period, there is no threat from the sirens. This surprised Wang Yu very much. Previously, their fleet was beaten alive by the siren fleet that appeared in waves every 2 hours, leaving only him, and even this one was beaten to pieces. What's wrong? Is it true that when he was already determined to die, the siren sympathized with him and let him go? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Wang Yu said that he has been fighting against the sirens since his military academy practical internship for many years, and has never seen sirens voluntarily give up attacking. Once these violent sirens target artificial ships, it will inevitably be a relentless attack. There is an old saying that goes well, it's called a cold winter blow with a white crotch. No, it's better to sit up and walk. So Wang Yu decided to go to the updated nautical chart on the bridge to see the current position of the warship. Leaving the command room located below the deck, follow the stairs inside the superstructure of the warship towards the combat bridge located on the 4th floor of the deck. But then Wang Yu discovered something quite interesting. He slept around 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon, and after 20 hours, it should be 2 p.m. the next day. So theoretically, this should be the peak of the day. But what Wang Yu saw through the porthole of the bridge's long corridor was indeed a sea dotted with silver under the moonlight. Wang Yu repeatedly confirmed that he didn't read the watch wrong, and there was no problem with the time. So what's the problem? He had a bad feeling, so he quickly left the interior of the superstructure along the long corridor on the side of the bridge and came to the outdoor platform outside the bridge, then looked around. Well, the sea surface is sparkling and the sea conditions are very stable. Clouds cannot be seen from afar, and even at night, the sky appears clear and transparent. 2 clear moons hang above the head, making the Milky Way, which should have been bright, appear somewhat dim and dull in the sky. Wait. 2 bright moons. Wang Yu lowered his head, rubbed his eyes with his hand, and then looked up at the sky again. It is indeed 2 moons, the smaller one emitting a light blue light, and the larger one emitting a milky white light. The 2 bright moons complement each other in the night sky. No wonder the brightness was quite high and the visibility on the sea was also very good that night. It turned out to be this reason. No, is that the focus now? Wang Yu is certain that there should only be 1 moon in his memory, and the situation of the 2 moons should be an ancient scroll. I really like a sentence from Wang Yu. Ah. This situation is really like a horse lying in an open channel. Lying in a big groove. This is definitely not an illusion, nor is it a so-called dream, so there is a lot of room for thinking about what is happening now. Calm down. Wang Yu told himself in his heart to stay calm. He did feel a moment of panic when he saw those 2 bright moons. But he knew that panic was of no use at this moment, so his rational thinking still had the upper hand. Wang Yu suppressed the idea of continuing to confirm the 2 beautiful moons, returned to the bridge, sat in his usual position in front of the main control panel of the warship system, and then began to ponder. There was an error in the time. It should have been daytime, but now it has turned into night. There seems to have been an error in the location. He just glanced at the chart and found that the battleship's position should be somewhere near the equator in the Pacific Ocean. There is no land within a 500-kilometer radius, but just now he went out to take a look and with the bright moonlight, he saw many islands exposed to the water on the distant sea level. Oh, and most importantly, 2 moons. There is a saying in Sherlock Holmes's deductive reasoning that goes, when you eliminate most incorrect answers, the answer that remains, no matter how outrageous, is the correct answer. Currently, this series of situations is telling him an unbelievable fact. He is no longer in the previous world. Wang Yu is not a pedantic person. When 1 or 2 phenomena appear, he can tell himself they are hallucinations, but when these extremely outrageous phenomena appear simultaneously, it directly proves that the situation he is facing at this time cannot be explained by science. So, having read many novels, he firmly believed that he had encountered the legendary phenomenon of time travel. The fact is here, even if he rolls around here and doesn't accept reality and shouts that it's not true, it won't help. He controlled his emotions and quickly accepted the reality that he had come to another world, but what he was now more conflicted about was that the usual traversal processes in those settings were all so-called soul traversal or solo physical traversal. It's quite novel to have someone like myself wearing a warship together with a crew. Given that there was no clear reason for the current situation, Wang Yu decided to confirm the current status of the warship first. Thanks to the special features of this warship, this is not a very difficult operation. As a super cruiser, Annapolis not only has comprehensive improvements in various indicators compared to traditional heavy cruisers, but also has its own technology at the bottom of the box. The automatic control system of the Sea Monster warship system. The Sea Demon control system comes from the reverse research of humans on some Siren warships that were destroyed near the sea, which is the taboo Siren technology in human cognition. The entire control system covers the entire ship and its function is to replace the large number of crew members required for normal ships, enabling all major onboard systems such as power, armament, observation, communication, etc. to be directly controlled by bridge commands. By setting up a control center on the combat bridge, the commander of this super cruiser can complete comprehensive control of the warship through this Sea Monster system without leaving the combat bridge. That's why there are many crew members on other warships, and Wang Yu is the only commander on this Annapolis. Because there's no need to set up too many people. Thanks to the characteristics of super warships, Wang Yu is enough to do things alone. It can only be said that after the appearance of the Sirens, many previously unimaginable things have become reality. Of course, the sea monster system is not omnipotent, and it also has certain flaws, which is why the super warship plan did not continue to be implemented, but only one Annapolis was built. But those will be discussed later. Wang Yu adjusted the control panel twice, and the searchlights of the warship were lit in order, illuminating different positions of the warship. The surroundings of the warship, which was originally hidden in the darkness, suddenly lit up like daylight. When he just pushed open the hatch, the fresh sea breeze outside the battleship dissipated the turbid air inside the combat bridge. Of course, the fresh sea breeze still mixed with a slight smell of fireworks. These fireworks odors do not come from the surroundings, but from the attacks on the warships. With the help of a bright searchlight, Wang Yu could still see the pitch-black marks on the hull of the warship that had been hit by gunfire. These marks and smells together proved that the warship had indeed experienced a bloody battle before, which was not an illusion. Wang Yu arrived at the porthole in front of the bridge and looked out. What caught the eye were two triple turrets facing the bow of the ship. There is a somewhat frightening mark on the top of the second turret, which Wang Yu remembers was probably caused by a large-caliber naval gun attack from a Siren warship in a previous battle. However, the turret armor is relatively reliable, causing the Siren's shells to bounce, leaving only an inconspicuous dent and glaring scratch. However, whether the turret was intact or not meant that other parts were intact. Wang Yu only cast his gaze towards the bow of the ship, and as the commander of the warship, he couldn't help but feel a hint of palpitations. The firepower of the Siren fleet was indeed terrifying. A twin-mounted 127mm gun placed in front of the bridge was directly opened and pierced, revealing the complex mechanical structure used for automatic control inside. The battleship deck was riddled with wounds and holes washed by shells, making it difficult to see an intact area. The unarmored areas of the superstructure are also filled with holes created by shells. Some equipment located on the deck has also been completely destroyed. The bow of the ship, which lacks armor protection, has also been perforated by shells, damaging one side of the ship's anchor and bow flagpole. However, most of the damage is through damage, so it has little impact on the performance of the warship. The damaged area at the stern is relatively small, so it's not a big problem. The main problem is still below the water surface that is currently not visible. In the battle, the Siren's torpedo pierced through the lightning protection bulkhead, damaging one engine and causing a significant decrease in the power of the warship. The underwater armor and water damage caused by underwater bullets also dragged down the speed of the warship. Watching the damage to the warship, Wang Yu felt a genuine sadness from the bottom of his heart. In his heart, the Annapolis ship commanded by him undoubtedly carried a heavy weight. He usually referred to this ship as Miss Anna, according to naval convention, just like during the pre-Golden Age of war when sailors often referred to the Lexington aircraft carrier as Lady Lex. More or less, it's all about the special feelings that warship commanders have towards their ships. Of course, someone like him who has feelings for warships is not an exception in the Navy. Many people directly state that even if a warship is purely made of steel, it can still be a wife. Some destroyer commanders even hold on to the gun barrels or torpedo tubes of the destroyer, twisting their bodies back and forth, left and right, while making strange noises and shouting, but elementary school students are amazing and other ghostly words. Well. Of course, Wang Yu hasn't gone so far. Complex thoughts only flashed through his mind, and he casually turned off most of the searchlights, leaving only a small amount of light shining on the surrounding sea. Based on past experience, the lights did not attract the attention of the Sirens. At the same time, Wang Yu set the car clock to the slow position, causing the warship to slow down to the slowest speed and move forward. Since we have already traveled, it is important to figure out what exactly this place is currently. To be precise, it is to determine what kind of world this is and then think about what to do next. You know, he's not alone. He's also carrying a basically fully automated warship. Given that the current terrain of this world is clearly different from his own, it is difficult for him to apply his geographical knowledge and navigation experience to the world he is in. Therefore, he cannot determine the specific situation based on information such as ocean currents, vegetation, and island locations. But he also has his own ideas. Yu arrived at the radio control panel on the side of the bridge and started adjusting the channel from low to high using the receiving mode. If there are still people in this world who use radio based on electromagnetic waves, theoretically, they can always receive some useful information. After some adjustments, sound finally appeared in the earpiece. And what's exciting is that the voice was clearly human and the language used was also understandable to Yu. It seems that although this world is very different from the previous one, some basic things have not changed yet. Yu pressed down his inner excitement and listened attentively to the content coming from the receiver. Here is the latest news about the Navy. Recently, due to frequent Siren activities, the General Administration of the Navy announced that it will increase its assistance to commanders in various port areas. The head of the General Administration of the Navy stated that during the Siren crisis, he hopes more ambitious individuals will join the ranks of commanders to resist the Sirens. We have just received news that the main route from Chongying District to Beiying District has been blocked by Sirens. Currently, several ships traveling between the two places have been delayed. It is reported that the commanders of the nearby port area have formed a joint fleet and are clearing Sirens. It is expected that the route will resume navigation within a few days. Yu twitched his lips and said, "What are you talking about? How come he knows every word and doesn't know what it means when connected?" Chapter 2. Wonderful World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Yu finally confirmed that there was the presence of Sirens in this world, and at the same time, organizations such as the World Navy Department were formed to cooperate in responding to the threat of Sirens. Of course, this is also the only thing he can be certain of after all the twists and turns. As for the remaining content, Yu expressed that he did not understand it. What is a port commander? The commander of all armed forces within a military port. That person has a better reputation than the commander who can only command one warship. No wonder they can form a joint fleet. What kind of ghosts are those names like White Eagle and Heavy Sakura? Yu could speculate that this should refer to different regions of the world, but the names of these regions were completely different from those he was familiar with. Considering that he was already in a different world, he was not too surprised by this. Just from the current perspective, there is a huge gap between this world and the previous one. The only thing that has not changed is probably the various underlying elements that build this world, such as gravity or that gravity, air or that breathable air, such as seawater or the seawater that can make warships float. However, knowing these things is of no help to Yu's current situation. It seems that his path to establishing a worldview will not be easy. Yu is adjusting the channel of the wireless point, hoping to obtain more information. After an hour of listening, he also achieved his wish. At present, he knows that the strength of the Sirens in this world is not high, and there are regular ship exchanges between different regions across the sea, and there are also so-called safe sea areas at sea to provide maritime routes. In this world, humans. According to the content, it is speculated that they mainly refer to the commanders of the port area, who are able to organize a certain scale of fleet, actively eliminate some Sirens that have invaded safe waters, and generally return victorious. This is unimaginable in the world before me. Apart from being slightly safer in the waters near the mainland, there were traces of Siren activity in distant areas. As long as the ship dared to go out to sea, Sirens would dare to charge up and attack. It is even more impossible to take the initiative to eliminate the Sirens. In the previous world, human fleets typically used passive strategies to resist the attacks of Sirens, and in rare cases, they would actively seek out Sirens for trouble. During navigation, if they encountered Sirens, they would dodge, and only when they couldn't dodge would they launch an attack. Unless it is during a large-scale invasion of the Sirens, it is necessary to drive these Sirens away from the coastal areas to prevent them from shelling the land, and the human fleet will actively seek to engage in combat with the Sirens. Recalling the common-sense content of the battle against the Sirens in the previous world, Wang Yu quickly withdrew his divergent thinking. It seems that I have come to a world that is slightly peaceful, but not so peaceful. This may or may not be good news, as it represents that Wang Yu and the Annapolis, which was built specifically to fight the Sirens, still have room to play and find ways to integrate into this world. As for how to integrate, that is something that needs to be considered only after obtaining more information later. If everything goes smoothly, then Wang Yu can confidently pat his chest like a horse master and say, I have been in this world for many years, and in fact, I have long been a part of this world. There's nothing too big a problem. Time slowly passed by as he pondered. The moon, which made the night sky slightly bright, slowly disappeared from the sky in 2 rounds, and was replaced by the gradually brightening dawn on the horizon. The content that Wang Yu will listen to next is not very useful, probably just some talk show broadcasts or song-on-demand broadcasts. However, to Wang Yu's surprise, when he started playing music on the radio, he heard the Moonlight Sonata can Beethoven be found in 2 completely different worlds. Wang Yu said that he could not roast. It seems that art is not only borderless, but also without the world. However, considering that the 2 worlds already have the same language, this wonderful coincidence is not a noteworthy issue. The morning light was faint, and Wang Yu looked through the porthole at the rising sun in the east. Well, it seems that the sun in this world still rises in the east and sets in the west, which is a good phenomenon. Wang Yu muttered a useless nonsense to himself. The judgment made by him based on the information of the working magnetic compass was based on the southeast, northwest, and northwest. Considering the unknown magnetic declination of the new world, the result may not be very standard, but there is always a rough estimate. This at least proves the existence of north and south magnetic poles on this planet. He found a watch and assumed that the sunrise time was 6 o'clock in the morning. Then he adjusted the watch to the corresponding position. He planned to compare it with his previous electronic watch to see if the flow of world time on both sides was consistent. Subsequently, he sat in his seat and waited quietly for the sun to rise. The sunrise at sea always looks very spectacular, mainly because there is nothing that can block the spread of sunlight. The red sun appears on the sea surface, reflecting the eastern sea red. Of course, the scenery is not important. What is important is that Wang Yu determines through the sunrise that the world is still a sun. It seems that the 2 moons are a characteristic of this world, and the sun is still normal. At least this planet is still orbiting a star. If 3 rounds of the sun appeared in the sky at this time, Wang Yu probably had no other choice but to dehydrate on the spot. It's too far apart. After the sun rose, Wang Yu quickly walked to the open platform located at the top of the bridge, which was the 5th floor. His gaze first paused for a moment on the dazzling black gunfire marks on the warship, and then he used a telescope to start observing the sea around the warship. Last night, he only used moonlight to get a rough idea of the situation, and now he can see more clearly. The warship is sailing at a slow speed of less than 10 knots on the edge of a densely populated sea area. About 6 to 7 nautical miles away from the starboard position of the warship, a large number of islands can be seen scattered on the sea surface. The distance between the islands is only a few hundred meters short and several kilometers long, and the entire archipelago stretches endlessly. Even with the help of a telescope, Wang Yu cannot see where the edge of this archipelago area is. He couldn't help but smack his lips. This may also be a peculiar part of this world. After all, in the previous world, even the famous Micronesian islands did not have such high island density. At the same time, he was also somewhat fortunate. Fortunately, he slowed down the speed and determined the direction last night, so the warship is now sailing through the edge of the archipelago. If it really rushes in, the dense reefs and narrow waters inside will probably make the warship extremely uncomfortable. Wang Yu had no intention of taking a stroll around the middle of the archipelago. He kept the warship on a fixed course and continued to advance. Due to the need to fight against the Sirens, the Annapolis has unparalleled endurance, and when fully fueled, it can sail 11,000 nautical miles at a speed of 15 knots. Although the warship has consumed a lot of fuel reserves in previous naval battles, the remaining amount is still enough for the warship to maintain its current speed of about 10 knots and sail about 4,000 kilometers. 4,000 kilometers is not a small number, about 2,200 nautical miles. Wang Yu felt that if he kept his course unchanged, he could always encounter land. Or at least some human ships. Before running out of fuel. From the information collected, it seemed that the port commanders of this world would go to the ocean to eliminate the Sirens, so encountering them would bring him to the civilized world. Although the risk of this approach is a bit high, it is much better than stopping the ship in place. Anyway, this world is not peaceful, and the threat of Sirens still exists. Facing the Sirens, only moving warships have the ability to fight back. The only result of a stationary warship is being destroyed by the highly precise Siren core explosion. The battleship accelerated slightly, facing the rising sun and continuing along the edge of the archipelago waters. The propeller stirred the seawater, forming a straight, pure white wake on the sea behind the warship. The stable navigation of warships can be entrusted to the automation system of the warship. Wang Yu does not need to stay on the bridge at all times. Instead, he uses the time of smooth navigation to retrieve the recording tablet that was previously thrown into the lifeboat by him. He reread the previous combat records while muttering on. Who knew a simple escort mission would turn into this? Following the battle records, his thoughts drifted back to before crossing into this world. Wang Yu was originally on a reception mission with the Annapolis, taking on a transport fleet. This transport fleet is responsible for transporting a batch of supplies, some warship design materials, and a special, Siren storage. As a result, the transport fleet was heavily attacked by Sirens in the distant regions. The main battleship, which was originally responsible for escort missions, suffered heavy casualties after several battles and was unable to continue escort. Therefore, it sent a distress signal to the naval base on the west coast of the Pacific Ocean through a wireless signal that was unobstructed at some moment. Therefore, the Navy urgently formed a temporary Special Operations Formation and immediately set off to receive the transport fleet. But no matter how fast the ship was, it was just like that, so by the time the high-speed formation arrived, it was already too late. The transport fleet suffered a fierce attack from the Sirens, with most of the main battleships sinking and only a few destroyers still using their mobility to constantly attract the attention of the remaining Sirens. The transport ship, which serves as the escort target, has also been severely damaged and cannot continue to sail. The addition of the new force defeated the remaining Sirens and rescued the damaged fleet. But due to the severe damage to the transport ship, the commander of the transport fleet decided to temporarily transfer the main cargo on the transport ship, namely the ship design materials and Siren storage, to the Annapolis, which had the least number of crew members and the most abundant space. The remaining materials on the transport ship cannot be recovered without a crane or engineering ship, so although it is regrettable, given that the fleet must depart immediately, it can only be allowed to sink into the sea. The ship design data is stored through several high-capacity storage devices, and the Siren storage is a regular icosahedron with a length of 0.75 meters, which is not heavy or takes up much space when combined. At that time, the fleet was relatively safe and had time to stop the ship to complete the transportation of these small cargo and rescue the survivors. And the next thing everyone knows is that the returning fleet encountered waves of Siren attacks on the way, then battleships sank one after another, and in the end, only the Annapolis commanded by Wang Yu remained. Looking at the battle records, Wang Yu's thoughts returned from memories to the present. Perhaps it was the containment that attracted the Siren's attack. Wang Yu muttered to himself. He stood up and walked outside the bridge. Anyway, it's necessary to check the status of the cargo on those warships. Those things are now placed in the compartment below the deck protected by the warship's armor box. Finding the corresponding compartment, Wang Yu pushed open the thick compartment door and saw the complex object with 12 vertices, 20 faces, and 30 edges, which was placed in the middle of the compartment and had a metallic luster and a dark blue color. It looks like a metal ingot. But Wang Yu, who had participated in the transportation before, knew that this was definitely not an ordinary metal creation. The volume of this icosahedron was calculated to be about 0.92 cubic meters, and this metal with a volume close to 1 cubic meter, even the lowest density lithium metal, has a full weight of 500 kilograms, close to the mass of a 305 mm heavy bullet. And now this thing in front of me at that time, only 3 people were able to easily carry the goods during transportation. Wang Yu conservatively estimated that he could move it with force. He circled around the icosahedron twice, but it was firmly placed on the ground without any changes. These Siren's creations have always been difficult to understand. Wang Yu shook his head. In the world before him, there were organizations under the World Federation government specifically responsible for accommodating these peculiar Siren creations, which always had various functions. Such as the Sea Demon system on the Annapolis. He is not a professional, so he does not intend to do things that only professionals do. In Wang Yu's view, recklessly touching the unknown, Siren containment, is somewhat similar to the suicidal behavior of welding detonators and sawing light bulbs, so he does not intend to study it in detail. As long as it is confirmed that there is currently no change, it is sufficient. Since there are Sirens in this world, perhaps research institutions in this world have also conducted research on Siren creations. If there is an opportunity in the future, it is safer to ask professionals like them to help study this hot potato. Wang Yu took a final glance at the motionless icosahedron and then left the cabin. He returned to the bridge and continued to guard next to the radio. This is currently the only way he can obtain information, so he will continue to try to summarize the content inside. Chapter 3, Even if you encounter a Siren. Hey, you really come. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Wang Yu has now discovered that without a heart that can fight against loneliness, it is absolutely impossible to deal with isolated ships in the ocean. If there are crew members on board, at least a small society can be formed. But as he is currently, he is the only one on a ship, and that is the combination of loneliness and boredom. As of today, he has sailed on the oceans of this world for a total of 72 hours for 3 days. By the way, based on comparison, Wang Yu determined that the time of day in this world is still an incredibly coincidental 24 hours. There were no interesting changes during these 3 days, and Wang Yu summarized some information through radio. In addition to the previously known White Eagle and Heavy Sakura, there are also factions like Royal and Dong Huang in this world, and these factions should have a cooperative development relationship, similar to the World Coalition government in the previous time and space. This world has a completely different geographical environment from the previous one, and terms such as the Pacific, Atlantic, Asia, and America have lost their meaning in this world, officially shattering Wang Yu's dream of finding some familiarity. At present, it seems that apart from similar planets day and night, similar directions in the southeast, northwest, and northwest, as well as similar languages and cultures, Wang Yu cannot find a place where this world can share common elements with the previous world. Oh, by the way, there's one more thing in common, which is the Siren crisis that also exists in this world. With Sirens, this world naturally has a presence similar to the Navy Department under the previous World Coalition government. Here, the organization is called the World Naval Administration. This is an international organization jointly created by the forces mentioned earlier. The World Naval Administration has taken over the responsibility from various forces to protect their maritime territories, maintain safe shipping routes on the ocean that can minimize the threat of Sirens to ships, and regularly eliminate Siren bases in key areas. And the combat forces under their command are the commanders of each port area. This is a surprising achievement for Wang Yu. There seems to be a significant difference in the combat system against the Sirens in this world. Simply put, in the previous world, the Navy divided the ocean into different combat zones, each with a supreme commander and a staff office. A single combat zone consisted of several naval bases located within the zone, forming several fleets to carry out different types of tasks. For example, Wang and the Annapolis were part of the 3rd Rapid Cruiser Fleet within the Solomon Islands base in the Southwest Pacific Combat Zone. In this world, the World Naval Administration has established many joint port areas in coastal areas. Within each joint port area, there will be multiple commanders, each of whom has a military port under their full responsibility, as well as a fleet funded by the General Administration of the Navy, which is then formed by the commander himself. The General Administration of the Navy funded and personally formed a fleet. It sounds unbelievable, but Wang did receive such information. In normal times, these commanders have a relatively high degree of autonomy. They can lead their fleets to conquer the oceans and use their military achievements to exchange additional supplies from the World Naval Administration for the maintenance and development of the fleet. When there are some important tasks, the World Naval Administration will hand them over to the nearby Joint Port Area, and the Naval Administration branch of the Joint Port Area will announce the tasks to the commander. These commanders will then select suitable warships from their own hands to form a mixed fleet to carry out these important tasks, and after the tasks are completed, reward them for their contributions. In fact, Wang looked at the content he summarized with suspicion in his heart. In his opinion, the commanders in this world seem a bit too strong. To put it nicely, they are like mercenaries, working under the general administration of the Navy, using as much resources as they need to do. But to put it bluntly, Wang felt that they were a bit like warlords who were separatist. One person can command a fleet, and when Wang heard about this, he decisively stated that it was really two men who had a falling out. The door was tilted, evil. Even in the face of the Siren crisis and immense talent pressure in the previous world, graduates from military academies like him, with excellent theoretical and internship results, can only command one warship per person at most. And a warship is also the ultimate force that one person can command. To command a fleet, it inevitably requires a series of people, including the fleet commander, fleet chief of staff, and a large number of fleet staff. Like in this world, it is absolutely impossible for one person to command a fleet. In short, this is all the content that Wang can get through these days of listening. In addition, Wang Yu's gain was that he also listened to 2 talk shows from this world, which he said were quite interesting. But apart from that, what he gained was some worldview content. I haven't received any information on how to get out of my current situation. So even though he has summarized enough information and reached the limit that a navigator can do, he still cannot change the situation where he needs to continue sailing. He can only look at the sea outside the porthole and feel the ups and downs of the warship swaying with the waves. Looking around, Wang could see no other commendable scenery besides the sea and sky. The scene where the sea and sky meet looks really beautiful in normal times. But if you really keep seeing this kind of scene, it can't be said to be ordinary, it can only be said to be dull and boring. At this moment, Wang sat slumped on the bridge, staring blankly at the various instruments in front of him. The cruising of warships does not require Wang to worry too much, just set a straight sailing command and a speed. These days, he has tried to send some signals via radio, but unfortunately, he has not received a reply. I don't know if it's because he's using the wrong channel. The ship advanced in a straight line for a total of 800 nautical miles in these 3 days, but during this 800 nautical mile journey, Wang did not encounter any ships. Whether it's a human ship or a Siren warship, they all seem to disappear. This surprised Wang as much as he knew about time travel itself. He knew that the intensity of the Sirens in this world was not high, but he didn't expect the density of Sirens to be so low. 72 hours of sailing without encountering any Sirens, it was absolutely impossible for the world before Wang to happen. If it did happen, then all the crew members on this ship would probably have wasted their luck of winning 2 billion yuan in the lottery together, and they would probably lose 20 years of their lifespan if they went back in this situation, looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com these days. He even felt a slight sense of difference in his heart. After all, his warship was still being chased by the Sirens in the front foot, and the battle was extremely brutal. He even prepared to sink with the ship, but in the back foot, he came to this seemingly quiet and peaceful world. Even now, let alone the noisy iron and blood of naval battles, he had not seen a trace of gunpowder. This contrast is not something that can be adapted to in a short period of time. To be honest, Wang Yu now even misses the Siren warship in his heart. After all, the appearance of Siren warships means that he may encounter the indigenous people of this world, which is better than sailing alone now. After all, Mr. Lu Sun, a well-known writer of the "I say everything" genre, has a famous saying. A good game can always advance the current plot after encountering special events. So now whenever Wang Yu encounters an enemy and triggers the first battle in this world, it can naturally trigger the following plot. Believe it or not, I believe it anyway. Anyway, Wang Yu has become so bored that he has started to wander around with these strange thoughts in his mind. Perhaps his prayer in his heart had an effect, perhaps he had sailed enough distance, or perhaps some supreme will felt that continuing to go underwater was not a good thing, so. His long-awaited encounter finally arrived. Wang Yugang had just prepared a bowl of noodles for himself as lunch using the small but fully functional kitchen on the Annapolis. Before he could pick up the noodles and deliver them to his mouth with his chopsticks, he heard the sound of the warship's alarm. The chopsticks in his hand suddenly fell to the ground. No, I said that wanting to see sirens was just my inner roast. Did you really come? Chapter 4 Radar, Start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the sound of the alarm that echoed throughout the ship forced Wang Yu to give up his plan to fill his stomach, put the noodle dishes back on the table, and hurriedly return to the bridge. The alarm sound comes from the shipborne siren warning device. This is a device that will issue a warning when a siren reaction occurs within 75 nautical miles of a warship, and it was also one of the key equipment that humans in the world could protect themselves against sirens in the past. The siren warships have some special features, which are full-range radar stealth. Their hull, or the interference around the hull, seems to be able to absorb or disrupt radar waves, rendering traditional radar ineffective. The uniqueness of the Siren warship also made the initial response to the Siren crisis for humans appear extremely awkward. It is indeed a despairing situation where the enemy can launch a sudden attack from all directions despite not being able to find the enemy. The feeling of humanity at that time was the same as the feeling of the big boats after your four-wheel drive brothers died suddenly within the first 3 minutes of the game. The weapons that humans were proud of were unable to be used, and they lost their armor in battles at sea. At that time, the Navy lost over 80% of its strength in the first wave of siren shockwaves, forcing humans to retreat to land and defend the coast. This predicament persisted for several years. Until one day, human research departments analyzed the wreckage of sirens that had been destroyed in the near sea, connected some characteristics of the siren fleet and developed a shipborne siren warning device that could give an alarm and provide rough directions when sirens approached. From this point on, the human fleet was no longer passively beaten like headless flies, and at least had the ability to be prepared when faced with sirens attacking. Through the warning device, Wang Yu found that the location where the siren reaction occurred was probably in the 305 direction of the warship. This is a way to indicate the direction at sea. Simply understood, this number is the degree required to turn clockwise to the target direction with due north as 0 degrees and the ship as the origin. In the 305 direction, it represents that the siren is located 35 degrees northwest of the warship. Wang Yu instinctively glanced at the northwest. Of course, he can't see anything now. To put it simply, the siren warning device is like a radar warning receiver, providing only a vague direction. To put it simply, it serves as a reminder and cannot obtain specific information such as the siren's azimuth, distance, and heading. After all, this device is only a passive early warning device, not an active detection device. It's good to tell you which direction there is a siren reaction. In the face of those warship commanders who roast that this equipment cannot obtain more specific information, researchers who do not need to go to the battlefield say so. Compared to being passively beaten before, it's much better now. What else do you need a bicycle for? 1. You stopped the noisy alarm. He pondered for a moment whether to immediately move away or take the initiative. Later, he thought that if the sirens chased after him, his speed would not be able to escape, and it would make it difficult for him to exert the firepower of the warship in his combat position. Therefore, since he couldn't escape and had to fight, it was better to approach the sirens first, use some special equipment of the warship, set up the formation, and take the initiative to attack. After careful consideration, Won-yu made up his mind. He rotated the steering wheel and filled about a quarter of the rudder, slowly adjusting the course of the warship. The warship tilted slightly on the sea and turned in the direction of the siren reaction. Then Won-yu slightly increased the speed of some warships and reached the 18th quarter. Although there is a siren reaction in front of the warship, it is not known how far the sirens are. The sirens are likely to be 75 nautical miles away or 20 nautical miles away. If it were an ordinary warship, we would probably have to be prepared to face the enemy at this moment. Because enemy ships can always lean out from the edge of the sea level to launch an attack. But for this warship, the reason why the Annapolis is called a super battleship is not only due to the comprehensive enhancement of basic parameters such as firepower and armor, but also mainly because some ships are equipped with black technology specifically designed to deal with the sirens. Interestingly, these black technologies mostly come from the sirens themselves, which means using siren technology to defeat sirens. The so-called Division of Barbarian Skills to control barbarians is something that the Naval Research Department can understand. After observing the sea level in the direction of progress and moving towards the direction of the siren reaction for over an hour, Won-yu estimated that the distance might be almost there. He skillfully arrived at the electrical control panel on the side of the bridge, and then operated it a few times to activate a special rotating device on the top of the bridge. Radar, start. The bridge information system provides synchronized prompts. Using surveillance radar, there are many siren technologies on Annapolis, such as the previously mentioned Sea Monster control system, which can be considered one type, but now we need to talk about siren surveillance radar, which can be considered another type. The siren surveillance radar is based on the siren early warning system and borrowed some new shipborne equipment developed by Siren Technology. Finally, it has overcome the passive warning disadvantage of early warning systems, allowing human warships to have the ability to actively detect the specific location of siren warships. The principle of siren surveillance radar is completely different from traditional radar. The principle of siren surveillance radar is to detect the special field of siren warships, so detection is not limited by the size of siren warships. From large siren warships to small siren destroyers, they will be detected within a maximum detection range of 40 nautical miles. And the closer the distance, the more accurate the information of siren warships detected. And this device also has a more powerful function, which is real-time detection without blind spots within a range of 12 nautical miles. As long as the siren warship approaches within 12 nautical miles, the siren surveillance radar can unconditionally reveal the location of the siren, whether it is hiding in extremely low visibility stormy weather or hiding behind an island, it will be accurately and without delay detected. However, this surveillance radar cannot be said to be perfect. There is nothing perfect in the world. This thing is too expensive to be mass-produced, so only a very small number of ships in the navy of the previous world were equipped with this type of surveillance radar. Zhaozuiyuan.com. Moreover, due to material limitations, the siren surveillance radar cannot be turned on for a long time, and a single start can only maintain detection for about 45 minutes at most. After each start, it enters a cooling period of several hours. Moreover, due to some immature technologies, the monitoring radar cannot be manually stopped after each start, and must automatically stop after running for a valid period of time. This also disappoints commanders who have the idea of constantly switching on and off radar, such as Wang Yu. So the commander of the warship using this Siren surveillance radar must have enough awareness to guess how far the Siren fleet is, otherwise if the radar is activated and nothing is detected, then the radar will be in vain. Now, after the warship had advanced almost 20 nautical miles towards the direction of the Siren reaction, Wang Yu had activated the radar to ensure that he had the greatest chance of discovering the Siren's position. The radar was turned on, but no Siren warships were found. Wang Yu's face showed no fluctuation, which could only prove that the distance between the Sirens was slightly farther than he had imagined, but there was no problem. The distance between the warship and the Sirens should be getting closer, and within the duration of the radar, he should be able to detect the Siren's warship. Time passes by minute by second. Wang Yu stared at the approximate direction of the Siren's reaction on the warning device, constantly adjusting the course of the warship, and at the information that could appear on the surveillance radar at any time. The surveillance radar at the highest point of the warship was constantly spinning, detecting the slightest trace of the Siren warship. Finally, after 15 minutes of difficult waiting, the surveillance radar finally spotted the presence of the Siren warship. Sirens were discovered at maximum detection range. That is to say, the Siren fleet appeared 40 nautical miles away, and was in the forward direction of the warship. Chapter 5 Prepare for Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, at a maximum distance of 40 nautical miles, the effectiveness of the Siren surveillance radar is not significant. However, the information detected so far can at least tell Wang Yu the number and direction of the Siren fleet's warships. This batch of Sirens has 4 heavy cruisers and 6 destroyers, making it a medium-sized fleet. If he occupies a favorable position, Wang Yu feels that he can completely eliminate this group of Sirens with his own single ship. But what made Wang Yu find interesting was that the direction of the Siren fleet's advance was not towards the position where the Annapolis was located. This is a very thought-provoking piece of information. Generally speaking, Sirens have 2 postures: silent navigation and attack mode. In a silent navigation posture, it will not produce a Siren reaction that can be detected by the warning device. The Sirens that can be detected must have engaged in an attack mode. When the Sirens are preparing to attack, they usually sail directly towards the target. The battle formation will not change until it approaches the line of sight range. As a result, the Sirens are not facing Wang Yu's side, but rather in a different direction. This only means that for these purely logical Sirens, their current main target is not the Annapolis ship where Wang Yu is located. Wang Yu's heart skipped a beat. A Siren fleet that has not yet set itself as its target but has launched an attack mode, so their target it must be the human fleet of this world. For Wang Yu, who is currently struggling to find this world civilization, this is no less than encountering Shirdi when he wanted to buy a game. He took a walk and found a sum of money, which can be said to be a surprise that fell from the sky. The tower must be opened now. Wang Yu immediately adjusted the course of the Annapolis based on the advance direction of the Sirens. He needed to intercept the front of the Sirens' fleet in a salvo angle posture when entering line of sight, in order to launch the largest attack on the Sirens as soon as possible. At this point, speed becomes very important. Unfortunately, due to power damage and hull rupture, the Annapolis was unable to reach its maximum speed of 33 knots in perfect condition. Currently, it can only be operated as quickly as possible. Wang Yu immediately set the car clock to full speed. The Annapolis clock forward gear has 4 gears, namely slow, 1/3, medium, 2/3, standard, and full. In addition to these 4 conventional gears, there is a special gear called maximum combat speed, which is the maximum speed that a warship can unleash in a short period of time, regardless of the lifespan of the power system. As Wang Yu changed the gear of the car clock, the Sea Demon control system automatically transmitted commands to the power cabin. As a result, a high frequency and rapidly increasing sound, similar to that of a jet engine increasing power, came from within the warship, and the power system that could still be used by the warship began to operate at full capacity. In just 1 minute, the speed of the warship was clearly raised to its current maximum speed of 23 knots. This acceleration performance can be described as ghostly. This is another pride of a super battleship. Its efficient diesel-electric hybrid power system. During cruising, the warship will use diesel engines as power, with several high-power diesel engines responsible for generating electricity, and then use electric propulsion to move the warship. But in the operating conditions of warship start-up, acceleration, or requiring full-speed navigation, gas turbines with high thermal efficiency at high loads will be used as the main power source. This type of fast and compact engine can allow warships to complete speed changes in a very short period of time, which can be called the launch start of warships, much faster than traditional steam engines. Unfortunately, the fuel consumption of gas turbines is extremely high, so in order to meet the required long range, Annapolis did not use a more sensitive combustion engine combination, but instead supplemented diesel engines with lower fuel consumption for normal navigation. At the same time, diesel power generation can not only drive propellers, but also provide sufficient power support for the Sea Monster system on the Annapolis. Due to the need to fight against the Sirens, the power systems used by various human naval vessels in the previous world were simply diverse, including comprehensive electric propulsion, combined combustion and steam, and alternating combustion and combustion. However, overall, the combination of conventional fuel boilers and steam turbines is still the most common. However, considering that the power system is not the focus of this book, just take a look at this setting. It's just a matter of introducing the advantages and disadvantages of different power systems to avoid suspicion of having too many words, fog. I got off topic. The propeller accelerates the stirring speed of the seawater, causing the wake behind the warship to become wider, while the bow breaks through the waves, scattering snow-white waves. The Annapolis is located in the middle of the ship, with a chimney top that integrates the gas turbine inlet and high-temperature exhaust, and also releases a white condensation mist. This is the water mist generated by the condensation of high-temperature exhaust gas when it meets the cold, mixed with a trace of exhaust gas generated by diesel engine combustion, and discharged outside the ship. Compared to heavy oil boiler ships with black smoke during navigation, the Annapolis looks much more beautiful and tidy. The appearance of a warship can really reflect its combat effectiveness to a certain extent, brothers. The 28,000-ton hull of the warship has also increased its shaking amplitude during accelerated navigation, but for Wang Yu, who has been living on the warship for a long time, it is not a problem. If it's over 30 knots sailing at full speed, then the shaking will be intense. The warship accelerated and Wang Yu began to inspect its armament. In the naval battles experienced in the previous world, the 4 main turrets of the warship were not damaged and were still able to unleash their full firepower. Wang Yu expects to be able to solve all the battles with the main gun in the upcoming battles. Not because of anything else, but because of the powerful main gun output capability of the warship Annapolis. The main gun used by the Annapolis is a 203mm naval gun, with a total of 12 triple turrets and a total of 540 rounds of ammunition per gun. Of course, there are many cruisers equipped with 203mm naval guns, and the Hindenburg and Yunxian class heavy cruisers of the previous world's human navy had the same configuration of 12 203mm naval guns. In fact, the key factor is the firing rate of the Annapolis naval gun. The normal firing rate of the 203 naval gun is approximately 9 to 15 seconds per round, with an average of 5 to 6 rounds per minute being the limit. But Annapolis uses the same type of naval gun as the Des Moines class, which can achieve a 5.5-second round, which means it can fire at least 10 rounds of salvo per minute, and within 1 minute, it can pour 120 shells at the opponent. There is no doubt that this is the unparalleled projection of a supercruiser. When fighting against the Sirens, sometimes the amount of projection can determine the outcome of the battle. The Siren warship has a strange characteristic that if it suffers enough damage within a certain period of time, it will be destroyed. The definition of this type of damage is very broad, including armor-piercing shells that can penetrate the hull of Sirens, high-explosive shells that can ignite flames on Sirens, and torpedoes that can penetrate the underwater hull of Sirens, all of which can produce the effect of damage. According to human research, it is inferred that the Siren warship has a battleship consciousness, which is responsible for controlling all modules on and off the warship during combat. When the warship is damaged, it will have an impact on this consciousness, and if the impact exceeds the threshold it can withstand, the Siren warship will be destroyed. So, to sum up, humans can not only directly damage the Siren's hull with armor-piercing shells, but also cause sustained damage by burning or flooding the Siren warship to destroy it. Therefore, even the rough and fleshy Siren battleships may still be sunk in the face of sufficient projection from naval guns. Therefore, unlike traditional naval battles where guns are 1 inch larger and kill people, even light cruisers equipped with only 152 mm guns have the potential to challenge battleships when fighting against the Sirens. Believe that sentence or not, I believe it anyway. The main turret began to rotate towards the side, and Wang Yu instructed the warship to adjust its guns in advance, heading in the direction that the Sirens might appear. After a period of full-speed sailing, the warship finally successfully cut into the direction of the Siren fleet's advance. At this time, the Siren surveillance radar in Annapolis also came to an end and entered a long cooling-off period. But at this point, it doesn't matter whether or not radar is needed. The Annapolis is already in position, and the Siren fleet will soon appear in sight. Chapter 6, The Navy has been deceived now. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, due to the curvature limitation of the planet, Wang Yu had to climb up the observation platform on the mast in order to see far. By borrowing the fixed high-power telescope there, he finally saw several ship shadows appearing on the distant sea level. The sight seen through the telescope made Wang Yu feel extremely excited. Because what he saw was a fleet. More importantly, it is evident that the artificial style of this fleet is not that of the Siren fleet. The Siren's warship is clearly still hidden below sea level. The largest warship he could see was constantly firing towards the side and rear, and every time he attacked, the clouds of fire and black smoke erupted from the muzzle, which could be clearly seen even from Wang Yu's side. His previous conjecture has been verified. The detected Sirens are indeed engaged in battle with the human fleet of this world. Moreover, it is evident that the Sirens are on the pursuit side, while the human fleet is in a drag knife position, running and using a backward salvo angle to intercept. Wang Yu leaned his eyes towards the eyepiece of the telescope and carefully distinguished the model of the warship. Unfortunately, although he could see the shadow of the ship, the distance at this moment was too far, so Wang Yu couldn't see clearly what ship the other party was actually. He relied on the clock to determine that the gap between the flickering muzzle flames of the largest warship was about 10 seconds per round, so he judged that it should be a cruiser. But that's all for now. Fortunately, the other party is approaching at this moment. If they get any closer, they can rely on the optical observation at the top of Annapolis to determine more specific information about this warship. Wang Yu suppressed his doubts and continued to look in that direction. As time passed, Wang Yu quickly saw another fleet leaping from below sea level. This time undoubtedly the Siren fleet. As expected, the two fleets were engaged in a chase battle one before the other. Wang Yu has learned about the number of Siren fleets. 4 heavy cruisers and 6 destroyers, totaling 10, are more than twice the size of the human fleet that currently appears to have only 4 warships. Perhaps this is also the reason why the human fleet is being pursued and attacked. Isn't it true that the Sirens in this world have weak power? A hint of doubt flashed through Wang Yu's mind subconsciously. But soon he thought of a reason. Who hasn't had a chance to capsize in the sewer before? Maybe the commander of this fleet only carried a small number of ships on ocean voyages and got away with it. Wang Yu continued to observe the two fleets constantly approaching his side. Although the Siren fleet is a pursuer, its forward salvo angle is relatively poor, so its single projection is limited. However, the human fleet constantly dodges during the counterattack, so it can still hold on with a relatively small number at present. However, in Wang Yu's view, without his own support, the human fleet that was constantly being pulled closer by the Sirens would probably be caught up in about half an hour, and the Sirens would be able to unleash all their firepower, and the result would be self-evident. Wang Yu was thinking about this matter when the sound of the warship's readiness alert came on. The human fleet has entered the observation range of the Annapolis. Well, entering the observation range means that this human fleet is about to enter the range that can be attacked. It also means that before long, the Siren will also enter range. It's time to showcase real technology. Wang Yu quickly returned to the bridge platform along the ladder, and then asked to first determine the composition of this human fleet. The result was quickly reported, and Wang Yu's eyebrows furrowed as well. The largest warship, as he speculated, was indeed a heavy cruiser. The main firepower consists of 8 main guns, arranged in 4 twin turrets in the front, second, and rear. The upper structure of the bridge section looks somewhat like a low armored fortress, while the rear part of the bridge is designed with a tower mast, with a single chimney arranged closely behind the tower mast. The entire upper structure looks quite messy, but unexpectedly has a beauty of stacking. Of course, Wang Yu recognized this warship. Surprisingly, it's Hipper's naval rank, he muttered. In fact, the scientific name of this class of cruiser is Admiral Hipper. In the previous world, this class of warship was only active for a very short time and was replaced by the subsequent Ron class and more advanced Hindenburg class. I didn't expect to see such warships here. In addition to the Hipper Navy's current class heavy patrol, the human fleet also had 3 ships, which Wang Yu identified one by one. 1 Brooklyn-class light cruiser and 2 Yang Yen-class destroyers. It's a bit interesting. But then Wang Yu couldn't help but shake his head. It is indeed difficult to have a fleet with this firepower configuration engage in heavy patrols with 4 Sirens. Although I didn't expect that the first wave of human fleet I saw after arriving in this world would be at a disadvantage when facing the Sirens, it's okay. Let's play a role of helping out when facing difficulties. Don't ask who I am, I'm just a passing justice patrol by chance. The maximum range of Annapolis is 16.2 nautical miles, approximately 29.6 kilometers. But this maximum range is actually virtual and difficult to use. Because this distance has exceeded the direct observation range of the Annapolis, to attack such a distant target, either Siren surveillance radar or relay artillery guidance must be used, otherwise blind fire will be the only option. Generally speaking, the chosen firing distance for Annapolis is called the optimal range, which is 17.5 kilometers or less. This happens to be the maximum distance that the main fire control system, which is installed at a height of 24 meters, can determine the firing elements. Wang Yugang just waited for a while, just to let the Siren fleet enter this optimal range, and also to observe the direction of the Sirens. Finally, this long-dormant supercruiser can once again make the main guns roar. The warship has completed a round of armor-piercing ammunition loading, and the main gun has been raised. Wang Yu firmly locked onto the leading Siren warship. Thanks to the advanced fire control possessed by warships, once a target is locked, Zhaoshuyuan.com will constantly adjust the firing parameters, and these parameters are also constantly fed into the main turret. The naval gun will also continuously update these aiming parameters to achieve a fixed aiming effect. Once the warship establishes a lock on the target, whether the warship rotates the hull or shakes with the waves, the aiming of the naval gun will not be affected. Well, this wave of Sirens should be able to dodge. Just hit the outer tangent deceleration position of this flagship. He is predicting the mobility of the Sirens, and it is also an essential part of the battle. The 203mm shell fired by Annapolis is a heavy projectile, and its flight trajectory after firing is a high throw trajectory. Although it has sufficient armor-piercing ability to attack the relatively weak horizontal armor of the Sirens by falling almost vertically at the end of the trajectory, the flight time of the shell is longer due to various reasons. If you want to attack distant targets, there are still certain requirements for the artillery skills of a warship commander. Fortunately, Wang Yu's artillery skills are quite good. Based on Wang Yu's previous combat experience, the Siren warship seems to have a warning of incoming artillery fire. Once fired from this side, the Siren side will immediately change their current heading and speed to avoid it. During the time when the shell falls, the Siren can easily complete the evasive action. So, every warship commander who has studied in military academies must learn to predict the position of Siren maneuvers in order to effectively hit. Wang Yu quickly identified an attack point, and the main gun of the warship tilted slightly as he adjusted his aiming point, ready to fire immediately. Now that everything is ready, it's only a matter of artillery fire roaring. Wang Yu recorded the start time of the battle on his tablet as usual, and then decisively pressed the button to fire the main gun. Chapter 7 Eugen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, several shells landed about 50 meters ahead of the warship, lifting towering water columns. The height of this water column has even exceeded the highest point of the battleship mast. The water column maintained for a moment and then returned to the sea with gravity, but there were still some scattered mist washed away by the wind on the warship. The porthole was also covered with a layer of water stains, but the wipers quickly cut open these swirling water splashes on the porthole. The distance between us and the Sirens is getting closer and closer, and if we continue like this. In the armored command tower of the heavy cruiser, a black-haired girl dressed in a simple sailor uniform looked through the narrow porthole at the occasional rising water columns around the battleship. Her delicate but slightly delicate face now carried an indelible worry. At this moment, the battleship adjusted its direction to one side, and then the main guns fired in unison again. The shock waves generated by 8 203mm naval guns caused a slight vibration in the porthole glass of the bridge, and a cup of water placed on the table also produced irregular ripples with the vibration. The inertia of the warship's turn and the vibration of the shelling caused the girl to turn her gaze away from the porthole. Her gaze turned to another presence also within the command tower. This is a girl who looks much more mature than a black-haired girl and can already be classified as a senior sister. She has a stunning silver long hair with short ponytails tied on both sides, and a highly eye-catching red highlight on her bangs. A military-style dress in red, black, and gray hues wraps around her supermodel-like body, adding an indescribable charm to her beauty along with her brown eyes. But at this moment, the black-haired girl had no time to appreciate this slightly more outstanding appearance than her. She is now more concerned about the more important matter of life and death. Eugen, how far is the main fleet? Still. The girl spoke up and asked. The silver-haired girl known as Eugen tapped her finger on her lips and pondered for a moment before answering. Before being blocked by the Sirens, the main fleet was still 200 nautical miles away from us. After hearing this sentence, the girl's worried expression became even more apparent. The main fleet still has 200 nautical miles left, and even if they sail at full speed, it will take 6 or 7 hours. Can my small fleet still persist for such a long time? As if sensing the girl's anxiety, the silver-haired girl, or Eugen, in other words, cast her gaze across the thick bulkheads towards the direction of the Siren fleet, revealing a slightly teasing smile. If you want to sink me, that's not enough. Upon hearing her say so, the black-haired girl didn't say much and came to the porthole again. What about the situation with other warships? Miss Helena only suffered some minor injuries, but she hopes you know that she is not in any major trouble and there is no need to worry too much about her. As for the two children, Yang Yan and Shui Feng, they are also intact. Eugen's smile seemed more gentle when talking to the black-haired girl, and she even made a harmless joke. Maybe it's because we've attracted the main Siren firepower. Helena is always like that. The black-haired girl pursed her slightly dry lips. She won't say anything more. My fleet and the Siren fleet currently only have about 5 nautical miles left. For naval warfare, this is already a very dangerous level. Even though the current mode of one retreat and one pursuit makes the Sirens have a low approach rate, they can charge towards their fleet position at maximum speed without changing their course, while constantly changing their course and speed to avoid Sirens' artillery attacks and complete counterattacks. In this way, the distance between the two sides will inevitably become closer and closer. About 20 minutes have passed since then, and the Sirens have come quite close. Although knowing that the main fleet should still be far away, the black-haired girl still hopes that they can come faster. Otherwise, I would probably have to become a member of the fallen commander. As she was thinking about these things in a frenzy, Eugen suddenly showed a mixed expression of surprise and astonishment. At the same time, she quickly stood up, who was originally sitting at the edge of the table. This obvious action brought the black-haired girl back to her senses from thinking. She looked at Eugen's expression and widened her eyes. Eugen is a girl with very few facial expressions, and she doesn't even smile much in her daily life. Seeing her appearing on this expression clearly broadens the eyes of the black-haired girl. If it weren't for the tense moment of being chased by the Sirens, she would have wanted to pick up the camera and capture this scene as a souvenir. What's wrong? Yes, there is a warship. What warship? Aren't all 4 warships in our fleet still here? No. Commander, I mean there's a warship in the direction we're heading. Eugen pointed to the sea level ahead and said, that's right, it's indeed a warship. It just appeared within my direct observation range, and she's aiming at us from the side of the ship. The black-haired girl quickly walked to the porthole and picked up the telescope, but was stopped by Eugen and said, you can't see it here, Commander. The girl suddenly understood. Accompanied by Eugen, she left the armored bridge and quickly climbed up the ladder to the top of the tower mast to observe the direction that Eugen had said, using a telescope. And now, she also saw what Eugen had said. A warship facing this side is sailing slowly. Although the distance was far, one could still see the towering gun barrels on the warship. The black-haired girl was somewhat shocked and said, what a warship. And it should be a battleship cruiser, Eugen made a judgment. I observed that the size of that battleship is not bad, it should have a displacement of nearly 30,000 tons, and it is on the same level as our main fleet's Haruna. If we only look at its length, that battleship is already close to the length of Tiancheng, but the black-haired girl, after all, is an ordinary person with the naked eye and cannot see more through a telescope. Therefore, since Eugen sensed more specific information, she quickly asked, what is it? But her armament is not as strong as I imagined, it should be just a 203mm naval gun like me. Regardless of the performance of this warship. The black-haired girl interrupted Eugen's thoughts and said, what is the other person's identity? Eugen shook his head and said, I can't tell. There are no flags or signs at zhaoshuyuan.com, but it seems that this warship is not in the state she should be in. Does this mean? There are obvious signs of damage on the surface of this warship, indicating that it has gone through many battles. Eugen shook his head and said, didn't anyone repair her? Her commander is really incompetent. The black-haired girl blinked and then continued to look at the telescope, so, why is this warship here? I don't know, she's clearly prepared for an attack, but... Before Eugen could finish speaking, the black-haired girl looked through the telescope and saw a series of internal infrared black smoke suddenly blooming on the side of the distant warship facing this side. She fired. The girl exclaimed in surprise. That angle is not an attack aimed at us. Eugen frowned and her gaze turned, falling on the Siren fleet still chasing relentlessly in the rear. It's more like... Are you saying she's attacking the Sirens who are chasing us? So far, yes. Eugen nodded. It's a bit strange. This is an uninhabited sea area, and the nearest port area is thousands of nautical miles away. Now, inexplicably, a battleship with bruises and wounds has appeared that is still actively attacking the Sirens. The black-haired girl developed some ideas based on these elements. She looked at Eugen and said, "Oh Eugen, have you ever heard of that legend circulating among commanders about ghost ships deep in the ocean?